All right. Offense, are DeMeco Ryans in defense? That is the question. Welcome to the locker room, number one source for daily Texans digital content. I'm Landry Locker. If you're in here, please like the video. I guess it does good things for me. Subscribe, whether you're a Texans fan or not. You can hear me Monday through Friday, 10 to 2, Sports Radio 610, home of the Texans. We have players on, we have coaches on, we have ownership on, and we are, in my opinion, the show of record. Biased opinion, but I think if you listen, you'll realize that. But yeah, subscribe, spread the word, and it's a really exciting time right now. It's kind of a grind. Started the channel during the season, but now here we are, and the fun stuff has begun. The offseason has begun. The coaching search continues. Sean Payton interviews yesterday. DeMeco Ryans going to interview Friday. And Ben Johnson, little news today, courtesy of Tom Pelissaro of NFL.com, he out. So Ben Johnson is out. Now, does that have anything to do with the Texans? I do wonder. I don't think Ben Johnson was one of the top candidates here. I know he was at one point kind of like I don't know the word to use. Do I say trendy? I don't know if he was trendy. He was popular early on, and I think people were there's a couple of reasons why Ben Johnson was popular. And right on cue, Tyler asks, Tyler Olson, shout out to you. Don't know you, but welcome. He's asking, what do you make of Ben Johnson pulling his name out of all searches? There's a lot of things that can be made of it. I want to first touch on why I think Ben Johnson was a popular pick, and I could be wrong. I don't want to speak for people who may have liked Ben Johnson. You can speak for yourself in the comments, like, subscribe, all that stuff. I think early on in the process, many believed, and rightfully so, that the Texans weren't going to be shopping on the top shelf. You've been used to the last 2 years, although this year's different, and you didn't think DeMeco Ryans was going to be interested. You didn't know that Sean Payton would be a possibility. And all these media types were telling you, well, this is a crappy job. Nobody wants that job. Nobody wants to work for that organization. So Ben Johnson seemed like someone that would, be maybe one of like the best candidates you could get. So I feel like people kind of gravitated toward that. Now, he did do a good job last year with Jared Goff. His only year as an offensive coordinator. Now, we have seen Jared Goff. It's not like he's Jamarcus Russell or something. We have seen Jared Goff run a pretty good offense. But it felt like, and maybe Hard Knocks had some stuff to do with it too. Maybe he was cool on Hard Knocks. I watched a couple of episodes. The meathead stuff with Dan Campbell kind of wore me out, and the Hardo, former player coach, kind of wore me out as well. But yeah, I think there was a certain element of, we're not going to be, talking to all the prime candidates. So Ben Johnson seemed like a popular pick. Now, does Ben Johnson withdrawing from consideration for jobs, how does that impact the Texans? Because this is a Texans channel. I do like to localize it. I think there's a couple of possibilities. One, I don't think Ben Johnson was going to get this gig. I think it could be a number of guys, but I don't think it was going to be Ben Johnson. I think if they went offensive coordinator, like in that tier, I think it would have been Shane Steichen, or Kafka, or Sean Payton. So I didn't think that Ben Johnson was really going to get this gig. So you kind of back out because you just don't want to waste your time. You don't want to waste their time, and you don't want to kind of leave the team that you're most likely going to go back to. You don't want to leave them hanging. Also, and Joe Person reported this, and he covers the Carolina Panthers better than anyone. And this is where it could really impact the Texans. It was believed earlier this week, according to Person, and I'll just pull up what Joe said so you guys can get a visual of it. Um, it was believed this week that Ben Johnson was kind of like the front runner um, in Carolina. Um, here's hell, this is actually good. This is his whole feed. So I'll just pull this up and we'll go through Joe Person's to get into like the theories as to why Ben Johnson, or how this could impact the Texans. First tweet says league sources confirm that Ben Johnson will remain on Dan Campbell's staff in Detroit. He was set to interview with the Panthers this week. If the Lions have another good year offensively, he'll be back in demand next year when there figures to be more jobs available. Lions OC Ben Johnson tells teams he's staying. A few days ago, this is where it's interesting. A few days ago, it seemed like Johnson had the momentum for the Panthers job, but he's staying put, and Sean Payton's interview with Dave Tepper is looming later this week. So maybe he knows something we don't know. Maybe the Sean Payton interview with Dave Tepper that's going to happen this week. Maybe Carolina feels like they got a good shot, or maybe Ben Johnson just knows something else. A person also says on Panthers candidates pulling out of interviews, my understanding is DeMeco Ryans' situation was more of a gray area. Panthers were interviewing on East Coast last week, and Ryans rightly wanted to stay in Bay Area to prep for playoffs, but Ben Johnson reverse was a jolt. So, yeah, guys are backing out of the Carolina job. What does that tell you? Dave Tepper, he's a rich guy. He's been pretty aggressive. They were in on Deshaun Watson. Maybe Carolina is the front runner for Sean Payton. Maybe. But you did have Ben Johnson, who the top beat writer in town said had momentum. You had him back out, and you have DeMeco doing it and stuff. So maybe there's something there. Sean asks, I wonder if you heard the reports coming – from before that Ben Johnson pulling out his name as head coach from Romaine OC. Yes, I just mentioned that. Yeah, that's really, really interesting. But Ben Johnson's out. So that leaves Steichen, Gannon, Evero, Brown, Peyton, Ryans, and probably Kafka, the hardo. And Mike Kafka waiting a week. He's number 2 on Watch the Films board, and he did do a pretty good job. Question I have though, and that's the thing I want to talk about, is the popularity of DeMeco Ryans, and he's been a lot of people's number 1 choice. He's been my number 1 guy for a while. I just think he's going to be a hell of a leader. And I think he's going to know how to run a program and an organization and bring in the right guys and trust the right guys and know when to intervene and not to intervene. When you look at the teams in the playoffs right now, and you see that 7 of the 8 teams in the postseason have offensive-minded head coaches. Jacksonville, Doug Peterson. Kansas City, Andy Reid. New York, Brian Dable. Philadelphia, Nick Sirianni. Dallas, Mike McCarthy. San Francisco, Kyle Shanahan. And Cincinnati, Zach Taylor. Does that make you a little bit hesitant to go the defensive route? And I'm not saying it's the end-all, be-all, and I'm not saying that, it's, 100% reason to withdraw from DeMeco or anything like that. I am just saying, is there something to that? Because it's a fluid situation when you're evaluating decisions. And one of my mentors and one of my friends, Jean-Jacques Taylor, he's going to write a book about Deion Sanders. Actually, he's been following him around for a couple of years. So congratulations to him on that. He always said sports are fluid. What's true today is not true tomorrow. And I think that's especially the case when we're talking about head coaching searches, right? Because sometimes a coach sounds like an excellent idea, and you and I'm not, look, I'm still a DeMeco guy, but the closer you get, the more you start asking yourself the tough questions. But you kind of take a look at things and you start asking yourself more so, well, why shouldn't we do this? Why should I not do this? It's the same reason that you buy a car. Like, let's say you're about to buy a car, and then all of a sudden you start looking at the paperwork, and you start weighing it out. And sometimes you get into the accounting and you just say, I don't want the car. I've never done that, but I know people who sold cars and it gets to that point. Or you back out on a house for whatever the reason. When you're looking at a coach and you're looking at DeMeco Ryans and you see that 7 of the 8 teams in the playoffs have offensive minded coaches, you kind of raise the eyebrows and you say, okay, is that just a coincidence? Is this guy different than the others? Is there anything to this? Like, does that matter? Because you can look at other defensive coaches in the league too, and a lot of them have offensive problems. And that could be as simple as they haven't found the right quarterback. That can 100% be the case. Robert Saleh with the Jets, if they had gotten Trevor Lawrence and they hadn't won those games, you know, they wouldn't have fired their offensive coordinator, and we wouldn't be talking about it. Brandon Staley with the Chargers, kind of, you know, one of those new age, younger, defensive-minded guys, kind of like DeMeco. There's been a lot of reasons why they've sucked, but they're firing their offensive coordinator. They're firing their quarterback coach. I think this is going to be now Justin Herbert's 3rd offensive coordinator, because Steichen was his rookie year, and then he had Lombardi for 2 years. So this is going to be his 3rd offensive coordinator. Belichick in New England, as soon as Tom Brady left. And this is a lot of it's his dumbass fault for some of the guys that he's trusting to call the offense. But they got offensive issues. If you go through all the defensive coaches in the league, really the only one that has, and some of the offensive coaches have offensive problems too. So I'm saying it's not just their thing. But this is just the kind of the way that you look at it and kind of the way you juggle it when you talk about DeMeco. Or you talk about Jonathan Gannon. Like, is there something to it? But really the only defensive coach who you could say got the most out of his offense and his quarterback was probably Pete Carroll this year. That's not in the playoffs. So is there something to that? I don't know. I've heard a lot of people say, I want an offensive-minded coach. I've wanted DeMeco the whole time. But 7 out of 8 is a lot. And maybe it's a bias. Maybe teams are just hiring more offensive coaches because they're scared to go defense. That's a possibility too. I know the other thing that often happens with defensive coaches, and I mean, I guess it could maybe happen to offensive coaches to a certain point, but a lot of the defensive coaches, they find that offensive coordinator, and then the offensive coordinator leaves, and they're just dead man walking. You saw it in Atlanta with Dan Quinn. Hell of a coach. He's getting more interest. And the job that he's done with Michael Parsons, I don't think too many could do. And I think he's a hell of a leader. And, you know, anyone who plays for Dan Quinn has excellent things to say about him. But as soon as Kyle Shanahan left, boom, plummet, gone, coordinator. So who knows? Who knows what happens with DeMeco? But I don't think Ben Johnson, let me put it this way. I don't think Ben Johnson, to go back to that, I don't think that Ben Johnson was going to get a head coaching job and said no to it. I think he probably knew that he wasn't going to get hired, and he said, I got to go back to Detroit anyway, so I'm going to go back. And now it's going to be, you know, almost presented as, well, you know, I just needed more time. Okay. I mean, I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying I think if Ben Johnson knew he was going to get the Carolina gig, or he knew the Texans were going to offer him the gig, I don't think he goes back to Detroit. So maybe he knows something we don't. Maybe he thinks that Sean Payton's going to end up in Carolina. Mike, Google me B. Hell of a name. Like and subscribe, by the way, please, folks. Would we be wrong to say DeMeco Ryan and Sean are 1A, 1B, and Gannon DeMeco are the last two finalists? You wouldn't be wrong to say anything. No opinion is wrong. DeMeco and Sean are 1A. I would say those are the two most popular choices. I would say that those would be the most highly regarded choices. And Gannon are the two finalists. Yeah, it seemed like a lot of people just felt like it was going to be Gannon. I don't know. I wouldn't be disappointed in it, but the list has become so good to where they could get a good coach, and I think there would be some disappointment, which kind of speaks to it. As great as Peyton would be as a rebuilding team, these draft picks could develop our team much faster. Plus, we don't have to waste draft picks. That's true, and I don't think you're going to have to give up as much draft equity as everyone's talking about. I just don't. I don't necessarily think that happens. Luke says, give DeMeco a blank check or only offer 33 or a future pick for Peyton, but none of these less than the only two coach options. Mid to late first round pick is what Sean Payton said the price would be. That's what he said on the herd. I'm assuming that he has a pretty good idea of that. My thing is this: 12 is not mid to late. So if I'm going to give you 12, you got to give me 40, and then I'll throw in an extra 3 because the Saints have a second round pick. They want to get back in the first round because they traded their first round pick to trade up and get Chris Olave. But they're not going to hold a team hostage. Sean Payton's going to pick his destination. You're going to figure it out. But if I'm giving up 12, you got to give me 40, and then I'll give you an extra 3. And then the Texans will still have 3 picks in the top 40. You ain't getting 12. For what? Like, for what? I understand the value of Sean Payton, but for what? The other thing is this, like, are you certain that I mean, would it shock you if Sean Payton came here and then eventually he gets the Saints GM here too? Like, couldn't there just be like a whole chess match going on? We are talking about the guy who apparently had like a wink deal with Tom Brady to go to Miami. So they might be in on it together. I don't know. I just don't like this whole like talk of 40 and all that type of stuff. Doesn't really make any sense. Cebu with a nice joke. Did Belichick send another accidental text? Congratulating Ben Johnson. Congratulations on the gig, Sean. Good to have you back in the league. And then Ben Johnson saw it. Are we going to get like a Ben Johnson lawsuit tomorrow? David says, give the Saints either one of our 2024 first rounders. If they demand too much, then come on, DeMeco. Yeah, I don't know. The first thing, whatever, maybe next year, whatever. Brown Chubby Bear, banned from Texans Reddit himself. He says, I have a feeling Mike Kafka is going to pull a Ben Johnson. I don't know what's up with Kafka. He's going to be a head coach, though. That dude's a hardo. Any news on Evero? He's interviewed. I wonder if Evero could end up being on the staff of the next coach. Although I think that there's a strong possibility. I've heard Vic Fangio, if Sean Payton's hired, don't sleep on Mike Zimmer. I know Mike Zimmer's he was at Jackson State as kind of an advisor, and there was talk about him maybe going to Colorado and being DC. But Sean Payton and Mike Zimmer, they worked together in Dallas for 3 years. He actually shouted out Mike Zimmer when talking about the Vikings collapse and how their defense just kind of went to crap. So, and I like former head coaches on the staff. I like former head coaches or young guys that have some sort of upside. I wouldn't sleep on Mike Zimmer being Sean Payton's defensive coordinator wherever he goes. They're talking Fangio. Okay. I wouldn't sleep on Zim, and I don't know what happens with Evero and how that works out. Does Denver want to keep? I don't know. Tyler says, why should anybody in Houston be excited about Gannon? Dude lost out to McCown last year. and the POS, person of service, that's a strong listener right there, Jack, can't be the reasoning I'm all the way out on Gannon. It's fair. Maybe they wanted to do him a favor and not bring him into that situation. I don't know. Maybe he's progressed. You know, maybe Gannon has progressed. But I immediately, you know, my initial inclination, and it could be correct. First of all, I think Gannon could bring in a good staff, but my initial inclination was if they interview him a second time, he's going to be the guy. Now, I didn't know he was going to be going against DeMeco, Peyton, Steichen, Kafka, Brown, Evero, all these other guys. But that was my initial thing. Getting a lot of EA Sports trade proposals, which is wild. Brown Chubby Bear's on Shane Steichen now. Okay. Major Payne asking why Bieniemy isn't out there. Look, maybe they just know what. Maybe NFL teams just know what they're doing with Bieniemy. I mean, we see Kafka now with the Giants. Like you see Kafka doing what he's doing with Daniel Jones. Mahomes is kind of, you know, OC / quarterback proof. We know Andy runs the show out there, although, you know, there's times where they've given Bieniemy more responsibility, but maybe they just know what they're doing with Bieniemy. It's a lot like Bruce Arians. Like Bruce Arians, Coach Peyton Manning, Coach Ben Roethlisberger. Go watch the Bruce Arians football life. You know, when he would go in interviews, he would just be real unpolished, and he would basically be the ultimate hardo, and, you know, just want to tell people what the hell was up, and, you know, say, you know, it's my way or the highway, and I'm just going to tell them the truth no matter what. I think it might be kind of the same thing with Bieniemy maybe. I'll actually show you this because it's actually pretty hilarious. The Bruce Arians, how he didn't get a gig, and like just the whole interview thing. Let's see. Yes, I got it. All right, here you go. So maybe Bieniemy just has a little Arians in him, or maybe you know, the league just knows what they're doing when it comes to Bieniemy, because I don't think teams are like completely opposed to it. But this is my favorite thing, and this is something I dug up when I was doing like some lab work for the show In the Loop, by the way, 10 to 2 Sports Radio 610. So this is actually really funny. I love this video. But Bruce Arians. The reality is Bruce Arians had to wait 25 years almost to be a head coach. And you can make a case that he doesn't even become a head coach if Chuck Pagano doesn't get sick. Because if you remember, his first chance was when Chuck Pagano got cancer and he had to go away from the team. Arians did such a good job that he ended up actually being coach of the year. And that's when, you know, they had no choice but to hire him. But just watch like them talking about him with the interview process.
National Football League.
You know, as kids, we believe in him so much. And we're like, Dad, you know, you should fancy up your resume, and you should, you know, say these things or do this to like get that opportunity. And
wait for it.
You know, he was like, I'm never doing any of that. That's not who I am.
This is the video interview with Bruce Arians, and today's date is February 21st, 2000.
So keep in mind, this is the combine, and this is the interviews. Like, real teams actually look at these. So this is Bruce Arians when he's trying to get his dream opportunity. And watch this. And I heard there's a little bit of a Bieniemy edge type of thing with EB too.
2009, we're at the combine in Indianapolis. Coach, it's great to meet you, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Let's start with a few basics. Tell us your current position and team.
Pittsburgh Steelers offensive coordinator, world champions.
Yes, I was about to.
It's always been, I'm going to do it on my merit. Somebody's going to call me and ask me to be their head coach. I'm not going to hire an agent and politic for it.
As you sit here right now, what are your career goals?
Well, I'd love to be head coach. It's always been a goal.
Maybe there was a perception about him that he was too real.
I don't believe in being there till midnight, 2 o'clock. I think that's bull, to tell you the truth.
Sometimes owners and GMs, they only want to hear certain things. And maybe along the way, because guys want these jobs so badly, they're willing to tell you what you want to hear.
I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what's truth, whether you like it or not. But it's truth, and truth don't hurt.
I had heard some.
I mean, that's kind of like maybe there's some enemy there, but it's absolutely hilarious when you go back and look at that football life. It's actually one of my favorite episodes. Strong recommendation there. So maybe that's the enemy thing. I don't know. I'm not as big of a enemy guy as a lot of people appear to be. But I do think there's more to it than maybe a lot of people want to put out. And it is kind of interesting. A lot of the people, like the biggest, it might just be a coincidence, but some of the biggest enemy proponents are the ones who said that no one wants this Texans job and no one wants to interview with the Texans. So I do find that a little bit interesting. Shane Steichen is most likely going to be our head coach. Look at last year. We needed a bridge coach to buy time. Besides Philly's front office is great potential to put together the next dynasty. You're throwing out dynasty for the Eagles? My gosh. Sean Kane said the Buffalo Bills may have a bone to pick. Pretty sure McDermott is a defensive guy. Yeah, that's why I said 7 of 8. That's why I said 7 of 8 teams in the playoffs are offensive and 1 is defensive. So there's no bone to pick. 7 out of 8. He's the one. Who do I think is the front runner? I think it's DeMeco right now. Like if I had to bet, I would say DeMeco. If I had to absolutely bet, I would say DeMeco, although the Sean Payton thing does kind of seem real. And then your guess is as good as mine as far as the others, but I think I think they like the Philadelphia guys. And they like the stuff that goes there. But if I had to bet right now, I would say DeMeco. What's the value of Sean versus a first round pick? Sean also said Bryce is too small. Landry, this is your 3rd video. Do you know any feedback on 6 interviews? Who is the lead candidate? Don't know who the lead candidate is. They always say the interviews went well. They're never going to say they went bad. We'll need key free agents also to be relevant. Peyton and DeMeco make it more appealing for veteran players, in my opinion. Peyton for sure. Don't know what players think about DeMeco, although I've never heard a player say anything bad. As a matter of fact, it's always been pretty glowing. LO says, well, I understand. And don't forget to like and subscribe. It is the Locker Room. Daily Texans digital content in the loop. Sports Radio 610 10 to 2. I'm starting to do resets in this mofo like I'm on the damn radio. LO says, while I understand what you're saying about the defensive coaches, we ain't stuck in those defensive coaches situations. We'll be able to draft a QB while they're stuck with their QBs. Very fair. Again, I said that it's something to look at. I don't know whether it's, a trend or not because, Sean McDermott, he has Josh Allen. So if you can find the next Josh Allen, it would be there. Interesting question that Jim brings up, talking about youth. Wouldn't you rather go younger coach, new ideas, fresh start? Yes, I'm tired of old guys, okay? I'm tired of 65-year-old coaches going up there and talking about old things. Yes, I am. Sean Payton does seem to be a little bit more in touch with today's NFL. He's not Lovie Smith running a defense that was effective 25 years ago and refusing to adapt to his personnel. He's not David Coley, who, let's be honest, he's a nice guy, but felt like I found myself saying that a lot. VR at this point, I think Sean Payton is my favorite option. The draft capital is definitely concerned, but he'd be able to coach guys up, yada, yada, yada. Yes. Michael Thomas. No, I don't want Michael Thomas in a rebuild type of situation. Just always seems to be drama, always seems to be an injury. But if Sean Payton can get him on board, whatever, but I'm not jazzed about having Michael Thomas. I prefer an offensive head coach. If we get the QB right, then a good chance the OC will be hired right away. With an offense head coach, you won't have to worry about the responsibility. Michael says, don't think Bieniemy could coach any better than Coley or Lovie Smith. Don't know if you're right or wrong about that, but again, I'm not the biggest fan of that. Chris got jokes. He says, hire Hugh Jackson as head coach. Take Stinson Bennett. He's a winner. Chris is just full of jokes today. Max says, do you think they should take their time interviewing, or you think sooner the better? I feel like a team might be announcing a hire soon. No hurry. You can go up to the Super Bowl, really, or even after the Super Bowl. Anyone who says like you hire sooner and all this, a lot of times people are just trying to sound smart and they're talking about, oh, you can get them at the Senior Bowl. Who cares? Like the scouts are going to be at the Senior Bowl. The scouts know what's going on with the Senior Bowl. A lot of times coaches look too much into things at the Senior Bowl. So like anyone who says, oh, you get them at the Senior Bowl, they're coaching the seniors, it's an advantage. Dude, you know how much access they have to these players. Like that's that fake trying to sound smart BS that I'm just not really down with. Get them to the Senior Bowl. Come on. Yeah, I don't think there's a hurry at all. So take your time, interview DeMeco. If you have to wait for Kafka, figure it out. Kafka's going to be a hardo. Process is going to play out. He's focused on Philadelphia. Just figure out what you got to what you got to figure out there. Hefe, we all know what Sean Payton is. That's what gives him an advantage over everybody else. You know what you're getting with Sean. Do you though? And I like Sean Payton, but like, do you 100% know what you're getting? I mean, you are getting a guy who's been around. You are getting a guy from that Parcells cloth. You are getting a guy who's won a Super Bowl. But you're also getting a guy that, had Drew Brees for a long time. And he deserves all the credit for Drew Brees' development. I think he would tell you that. But we don't 100% know what he's going to be without Drew Brees. We saw a little bit of it the final year. They weren't terrible. And, we've seen him work with Quincy Carter in Dallas, and they made the playoffs and all that. And he helped develop Tony Romo, huge hand in developing Tony Romo. That was the best education Tony Romo ever got, his 3 years with Sean Payton. But, okay. BR says, I'd love if we coached at the Senior Bowl. Why? Like it's over romanticized. It's really just why. Double Cross Swine says Sean is a quitter. I agree. He quit the Saints. Why? I don't know. Maybe he needed a break. Maybe he just didn't want to coach that situation. He need a fresh start. Sometimes I think we've heard this about 65 times this year from Lovie Smith. Sometimes divorce is a good thing. Maybe that's what he wanted. But who knows? B Bake says, Landry, how often do you hear takes that make you question how much football people are actually watching and understanding? Sometimes Greg Gumbel's statements make a lot of sense to me. You're talking about the sports radio comments from Greg Gumbel. Let's just be real though. Greg Gumbel doesn't like sports radio because his ass got fired from it. I think WFAN got rid of him because he was boring on there. He's good in the studio set, but like on sports radio, it's a different beast. Like it really is. Like it's not easy. It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of stuff. Like on this, like I'm either ba 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 or I'm, laid back. But on the radio, man, got to have that tempo. You got to have that tempo. You got to go if you want to have a good show. You got to interact and all that type of stuff. That's just not really Greg Gumbel's style. He's more of an elitist. I think to be a good radio host, you have to be somewhat of a man of the people in some way, shape, or form. I'm a former player and this is how it goes. And let me tell you about this. Like the former players, you got me on the soapbox, B-Bake. You know how to get me off track. But like the former player, just like sitting there and thinking you're going to sit crisscross applesauce and listen to him. Those days are over. Social media is such to where you go on social media, you can see what these players are thinking. And it's weird because sometimes a player will say from a player's perspective, and they act like they're speaking for all players. Have you ever been in an NFL locker room? Have you ever been in any locker room? You can go in a middle school locker room. Do you really think one guy's going to speak for everybody? So I always think it's funny when someone goes, well, you are a player? Oh, this is what a player. Bitch, there's 50 people. There's like 70 people in the locker room. You ain't speaking for every one of them. I can promise you that. So, yeah, sports radio, I say all that to say, yeah, sometimes there are guys who aren't watching games. I don't think it's the end all be all, though. There's people who watch tape. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be a film guy. There's a lot of people this time of the year that will. There's people who watch tape. There's people who have great experience. There's people who tell great stories. There's people who are polished. I don't know if I'm any of these things, quite honestly, but it's kind of just like a different thing. So some guys watch more games than others. But yeah, when you hear national media speak on certain things, sometimes it's a little bit crazy. And sometimes it's really actually kind of sickening, especially with the way some people have talked about the Texans. Say whatever you want about the Texans. They've been incompetent. They've been stupid. They've made dumb decisions. They trusted the wrong people. It's been garbage. They've been out of touch. They don't know. Say whatever you want. I've said it all. But like some of the stuff that was being said about the organization and about the McNairs and, you know, how the Lovey situation went down, how the Culley situation went down, it was weird. It was really weird. And when you hear Tony Dungy or you see Tony Dungy, who literally is in studio every single night. And I'm not trying to pick on Tony Dungy. I just think he's become like the new Bill Polian who just talks out of his ass. But when you see Tony Dungy and you hear Tony Dungy say, well, Ryan Dable's calling a hell of a game here against the Brian Dable is calling a hell of a game against the Minnesota Vikings. He has the defense all sorts of out of touch. Brian Dable doesn't call plays, sir. That's been common knowledge since he hired Mike Kafka. He literally said he was going to let Mike Kafka call plays. If you're watching the game, Brian Dable's running around doing the CEO thing that Mike Tomlin and all them do. Sir, legend. And I'm not trying to besmirch the presence and the legendary presence of Tony Dungy, but I mean, damn. I mean, you're in studio on the largest studio show in the NFL, damn near 20 weeks a year. You're calling a playoff game. And you don't even know who calls plays for the Giants? It's a pretty damn big market. My ass is in Houston. I've known that for 4 months. And then you're going to sit there and talk about a team that no national media type should follow. Nobody should follow the damn Texans. For what? They get like 22 seconds of airtime. They don't even deserve that with how they've been. But you're going to go up there and talk about you can't trust them with their coaching job? You're going to try to go that deep when you don't even know who's calling plays? Come on, man. Some of this stuff is just kind of silly. And I think it's kind of been shown that there is interest in the gig. So there's that. But yeah, you kind of took me in a different spot. What do you think, Landry? Peyton can be negotiated with Brandon Cooks. The Saints don't want Brandon Cooks. They already traded him, and they traded for Chris Olave. So they have a cheap receiver. So, and you can't trade players for coaches. I know, John, back in the day you could. You can't trade players for coaches. So no, Brandon Cooks, no connection to that. Shane worked with Phillip Rivers, Justin Herbert, and developed Jalen Hurts. My number one was Kafka, but I think he's going to stay in New York. Yeah, Shane Steichen did a very good job with Justin Herbert. He's done an excellent job with Jalen Hurts. Phillip Rivers was kind of a finished product, but I get what you're saying. But yeah, James says the Texans should go with Astros uniforms. Who is this weirdo who's like going back and forth with like old people? Y'all, you got too much time on your hand, whoever that is. That's weird. But anyway, Tony is the Bill Cosby of the NFL. Kobe Tree says that. What the hell does that mean? Who's Tony? I'd be disappointed if the Texans hire Gannon with the guys the Texans have interviewed. You can get way better if you hire Gannon. How would you pick him over DeMeco? I don't really know. Nathan says, I told Tony Dungy to eat Jell-O on In the Loop. I did. Man, I made today, if you listen to the show, fire it up on the Odyssey app. It's fun to listen to at work. It's not just like some sort of like blowhard type of thing. I think it's the show of record in town. I'm biased, but nobody in this town's putting in more. I won't say as much, more work on covering this team than myself. And you add in Lopez's experience and Figgy being the legend and awesome all around everything that he is. I just think it's good. But yeah, I made 2 Lubies references today in 20 minutes. And I don't know why, because I think I was talking about like old or something like that. But I ate at Luby's like a couple of weeks ago, and I think I've just had my mind on it for a while. How weird is Luby's, by the way? Like you eat it and it's like, okay, this isn't awesome. I probably could have spent money and like eaten somewhere like better. Like I could have gone to Chili's or something like that. But for some reason, I just really enjoy this. I don't even know. Like, is it really that great of an experience? Like when you go to Luby's, are you really like having that great of an experience? I think that's where Tony Dungy needs to be. He needs to have someone carrying his tray. He needs to be like in the corner talking about football or something as someone refills his iced tea. Because at this point, he's becoming the Bill Polian of the NFL. And he just has so much respect that's where we've gotten. How much of a voice do you think Dre has in this search, if any? Dre has a voice with the organization. Andre, you're talking about Andre Johnson. I would be shocked if he's not at least some sort of middleman or some sort of like line of communication with DeMeco Ryans. Shocked. I would bet my life that Andre Johnson has some sort of presence there. And you want to talk about excitement. If that happens, there's going to be some excitement. And Andre's going to be the most excited guy. He doesn't tweet a lot. Unless he's exposing the POS, person of service, Jack Easterby, or just a tweet every then and now. But there would be some sort of like emotional tweet. He's more active on Instagram. But yeah, I think Andre is involved in this. And I don't think Andre likes what's going on. He's been around a lot more often. Arian Foster, I think, was talking about, what's up with him? What's he want to do? Does he want to be like a GM? Or what? BR national media only covers the Texans when they do something perceived as negative, for sure, and that's what they should do because the Texans have sucked. So it's not like some sort of badge of honor that I know, like we know about the Texans and the national media doesn't. Why the hell would they? Why the hell would they? Why the hell would they want to? So I understand that very, very, very much. I guess Abel's talking about the app. Man, just hang with it. They'll get through it. I know sometimes there can be some issues. They are fixing the kinks and there's some stuff, but the Odyssey app is pretty cool. You can take us wherever you want to go. But I understand your frustration at times. Technology sucks sometimes. Even the best, but they'll get it. They'll get it perfect like a well-oiled machine. BR says, I like Gannon more than most because of his connections. He's going to put together one hell of a coaching staff. I think Gannon's going to put together a good staff. I think Steichen's going to put together a good staff. I think DeMeco's going to put together a hell of a staff, and Sean Payton, I think, is going to put together a hell of a staff. I think they're all 4 of those guys can put together a staff. I think Brown, Evero might be kind of fighting an uphill battle. Kafka as well. Although I would wonder like what kind of angles he goes. Like, does he dip into Kansas City? Is he going to try to dip into New York? What would Kafka do? But yeah, I think these are that's really one of the things that sucked the most about Lovie Smith and David Culley. I mean, a lot sucked. I mean, the fact that it even got to the point where your organization was in a position to where you had to make those hires sucks. But one of the things that sucked the most was that those dudes, their staff sucked. Like, I don't even know if they were hiring them. Like, I think Jack actually was the guy that was really in on Lovey. But yeah, their staffs were terrible. I think that's the one thing Philadelphia. It's pretty impressive that they already got guys going in there. Mike says Luby's has no seasoning. Yeah, that's because old people can't eat the seasoning. So you have to like season your own stuff. Mulligetta being Stroud's agent, sour the Texans on him. I don't think so. I doubt that. Hey, Wheelock, DeMeco's going to bring back all his former teammates on the staff. I hope not. Although I could see Cushing wanting to get in on it, although they only played together for a couple of years. And they kind of, it was Cushing like expected to take over that role. Jim Stamos says, Landry, you have to try Cleburne Cafeteria all by. Well, you got some deep pockets. I've been to Cleburne Cafeteria. Got some deep pockets at Cleburne. Cleburne's nice though. But yeah, it's elite. It's definitely elite. You go to that ain't even like you're saying you got to try Cleburne when I'm talking about Luby's. Man, that's like someone saying I'm going to go to freaking Saltgrass Steakhouse and then you say, "Man, you got to try Fleming's or Steak 48." That's a notch up. That's a different weight class. Man, Cleburne, though, they are not stingy with the portions, even a little bit. Mike Will, all the Texans' former players coming back feels like real Texas football, and tailgating will be lit. Tailgating stayed lit. Shout out to all the tailgaters, the Grill of Meat tailgaters, the Nuff Said tailgaters, the no-name tailgaters, all the tailgaters. We actually judge those. We're out there in the tailgates before. The tailgates were straight. There definitely is a lot of room for more. Though, Tyler, it would probably not end well, but what if DeMeco Ryans comes in and demands Dre be made GM and Waiting and Caserio is required to train his replacement? Man, I don't know if Andre wants to be a GM. I know he wants to be involved. Maybe he could be like a football operations guy, except not like a linger like the POS Jack Easterby. Vera says, would it be realistic to have the staff in place before Shrine and Senior Bowl game? I don't care about that. I know a lot of people like say that. I just don't really care about that. Houstoners 420. What music does Jack Easterby listen to? Definitely some sort of gospel every once in a while. And then he seems like the kind of guy that would act like he was like down and listen to like some Tupac and Biggie or something like awkwardly, and like even train himself to like remember the words. I don't know. Zimmer is a possible DC, and Reich or even Brian Johnson is possible OCs. I like Brian Johnson. I actually think that if you bring in Gannon and you bring in Brian Johnson, the QB coach up there, and you let him call plays, I think he could be a big up and coming name. And I think he could be, it could be Kafka-like, where, but again, Mahomes is a different situation, but Kafka's, showing that he knew what the hell he was doing. And Mahomes always spoke very highly of him. Maybe Johnson comes here and you kind of see the ability to maximize a quarterback, much like you did with Kafka up there with Daniel Jones. Robert G says he listens to Justin Timberlake. Man, a lot of people listen to Justin Timberlake. What happened to old JT? Steichen and Young equals playoffs in 2023. We're talking playoffs. Man, I just want to get through the draft. I just want to see the roster. I just want to see some free agency. That's where I'm at. But again, to reset, Ben Johnson out, DeMeco Ryans, he's going to interview Friday. Sean Payton, he's going to interview with the Panthers on Saturday, and business should be picking up. And we'll keep hearing more and more news, and we'll keep cussing and discussing it. A lot of people on that offensive train, but DeMeco's going to be hard to pass up. Big fan of DeMeco. I'm big fan of DeMeco being down with the gig. I think he's going to be one of those leaders, one of those CEO type leaders that has a hand in almost everything. And I think he would be, as far as like, if Sean Payton comes, I don't know what changes. Like, I imagine like our access would be probably a little bit more limited. Although I think he understands he'll understand the importance on the business side with the communication and stuff. But, you know, he does come from that Parcells, Belichick type of thing. Although Belichick does weeklies and there are players who speak and stuff like that. But I think DeMeco will be able to play the game and figure some stuff out. And he's gonna look like a G on the sidelines, and he's not gonna be wearing that old ass visor. I'm still a DeMeco guy. To answer the original question, I'm still a DeMeco guy. I am becoming intrigued by the Sean Payton possibility. But that's where I'm at. James says he likes Wade Phillips for what? I would love to know what you like Wade Phillips. I like Wade, son of bum. But what do you like him for? To do what? The Patriots never really drafted well, but they add key free agents. So why do we have so much faith in Nick if Mills was his choice for starting quarterback in Rex? I didn't find anything wrong with starting Davis Mills this year. It didn't work out. I thought it was worth a roll of the dice. And quite honestly, you bottomed out. I think that's better than, you know, some sort of like mediocre stopgap type of guy. Sometimes it's better to bottom out. I'm not saying that was a master plan, but you draft Davis Mills in the third round with how he looked last year, you kind of figure it out. And that's where that goes. Genuinely curious. God, when something happens like this, it's usually, or gets prefaced like this, it's usually like a crazy comment. Why do any of us care about national media talking about the Texans? Winning is all that should matter ever. Why does anyone care what media thinks about anything? I don't know. You're in a media type's YouTube channel. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. I mean, I guess that's a personal question, man. Some people care, some people don't. Different strokes for different folks. Double cross swine. I like all the coach options except Sean. He's going to quit again, and I can't get over that feeling. Fair enough. He did quit. Cameron says, isn't Wade coaching the XFL team? He is. So I guess that's what we're talking about, not NFL. Okay. Give me no pressure Mills as backup, and I'll be happy, especially if Young is starting. You and me speaking the same language. Big Bryce Young guy here. BR says, I think Peyton would have real success in the AFC South. Why would he quit on us if he can build us into a great organization? Your guess is as good as mine. Who knows? Although I will say he does come from the Bill Parcells tree, where Bill Parcells, it seemed like, comes in and then all of a sudden he doesn't know if he wants to do it, and then he wants to do it. We haven't seen that with Sean Payton. He hadn't gotten to that point yet. He hadn't even hit the 60s yet, but he still seems pretty sharp. He still seems pretty polished. He still seems pretty on it, but we have seen that. Search continues in the loop tomorrow, 10 to 2. Appreciate all the listeners for coming through. Like, subscribe, spread. we're going to keep the daily digital content coming. Been doing 2 videos a day lately. It's off season. So there's plenty more to talk about. And whenever news breaks, you can trust that I'll react to it right here. And you can trust that we'll do the same 10 to 2 Monday through Friday, Central. I guess I have to say Central because this is more of a national type of thing. But yeah, follow along, ride along. There's a lot to get into, and I can't believe we're even having these discussions, but it's happening. Ben Johnson out, the list continuing. DeMeco Ryans interviewing in 3 days. No matter what happens, don't forget, we're all in this together. Have a good one.